Hi there, and welcome to Bourbon Turntable. We are the show that blends the love of whiskey with the love of music. And joining me tonight are my co-hosts, as always, Drew Crawley. How you doing, Drew?
I'm great, sir. Yourself?
Awesome. And Benjamin Eves. What's happening, Ben?
Doing great, man.
Yeah, surviving the working in on the still and in the rick houses over at Kentucky Artisan, I see.
Yeah, making it.
and we have a very special guest tonight, Kris Koenig of Golden Beaver Distillery. And I guess I should say American film producer, Kris Koenig.
Long time.
Yeah. And I want us to make sure we spend all the time we can talking about distilling, but give us a brief background, Kris, on your time in documentaries, right?
Documentaries came late in my life. I was about 38, 39. I was hired as a content expert on a 10-hour PBS series on astronomy.
Mm-hmm.
And I went from consultant to field producer to the writer of the series. And it came out, and I got 2 Emmys, one for writing and one for production.
That's fantastic.
So
that's awesome.
It's great.
I was just sitting there going, well, I guess I got to start making film now. You know, we got the Emmys. So that started about a 15-year period of my life where I was making films. And we did stuff on astronomy, obviously. We followed up with 400 Years of Telescope with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
In 2009. That was a special for PBS on national broadcast. We did a Second Amendment film looking at the Second Amendment as a civil right. And that was narrated by Ice-T. And you can catch that still on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did some stuff in Africa. And then we did a film on site, The Story of Vision. And that ended up being narrated by Sir Elton John. And the reason why is that my wife had succumbed to stage 4 breast cancer. And her dying wish was to have Elton do the narration. So we tracked Elton down, and he agreed, and he did a fabulous job. And that was my last film.
Wow.
With her, my passion for filmmaking went away. So, and, so that led me on to doing my pursuit of distilled spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we're here now. So I actually got trapped in Scotland during 2010 during premiering one of the films. And the volcano that had erupted in Iceland had shut down all the air travel. So I ended up meeting Charlie McLean, who is one of the leading experts of Scotch, if you know Scotch or if you follow Charlie. And I did 2 master classes with him, went to dinner, and then ended up at his house at 11 o'clock at night. And he started bringing out these boxes filled with Robitussin sample bottles. And he had all this distillate from all over all the distilleries of Scotland. I sat there until 7 a.m. drinking with them. And I was totally blown away by the spectrum of flavors. I mean, unless you really dig into Scotch, there's Scotches that taste like tequila. There's Scotches that taste like bourbon. I mean, it is a vast array of flavors. And you sit there as a novice going, well, how do you do this? I mean, how do you make all these flavors from one grain? And so that's where I got totally turned on to distilled spirits.
Right.
And then being a user, I went through a period of Scotch period. I'd already been doing whiskeys, American whiskeys, got into Scotch for about 3 years. And I said, I like Scotch, but can't pronounce the names of these bottles, So that's you can't drink something you can't talk about. I switched back over to bourbon and American whiskeys. And then my current wife was nice enough to give me a still. And I may or may not have distilled in my home. And I will not confirm that.
Allegedly.
We understand.
Might have done that. And taught myself distilling. And
wow.
One day, my brother was sitting there. He came over, and I had a 1 liter cask that had been aging some bourbon on it. And my brother had a glass of that, and I was out doing another run of rice, I think. And he just turned to me and says, "When are we going to open up shop?" And that's how Golden Beaver started. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that. So when did you start the distillery itself? When did you break ground and put a still in?
Yeah, we started about 2018 with the thought, and then we hooked up with our other founding partner, Frank, and his wife, Keisha. And the first step was I had already gone to Moonshine U and went there, and basically that's anybody thinking about opening up a distillery or doing anything in the liquor business needs to go to Moonshine U for that first course, because it is it's drinking out of a fire hose. You get a shitload of information.
Yeah.
And you get anxiety attacks on one after the other because you don't know what's good common. There are so many facets to this industry. I will tell you, and as you're finding out, Benjamin, it is not an industry for the timid.
Right.
Because there are so many moving parts that if you think you're just going to go in and do one job, just give up, because it's not for you, because you have to do everything. So went to Moonshine U, got that going. We were originally going to go up to Paradise, which had just experienced the campfire and all the loss of life up there. And that didn't quite work out. The city decided that we needed to rebuild one of the roads adjacent to the building, and that wasn't going to happen. And so we ended up at our current location here in Chico, which is actually closer to our house. We're from Chico. And so we got in here 2 years ago, about December. Opened up last Black Friday. The government closed us down on Black Monday for COVID. And we limped along in the shutdowns and everything. We did, however, raise over a period of December through February, raised $40,000 to rebuild a Honey Run covered bridge that got burned down, selling a honey post-sweetened honey bourbon that we bring in from MGP. We're very honest about that, but we sweeten it with some California wildflower honey, and that just took gold at the National Honey Spirits Foundation, or honey. I guess it's not honey foundation, Honey Board. It's the National Honey Board, and they had they have a contest every year for honey spirits, and we just took a gold on that. Our colleagues in that, I think Garrison Brothers took a silver, and Evan and Williams took a bronze. So we're in great company. We're really stunned that we actually did that well.
You're kicking butt. You're kicking big boy butt.
We're doing okay. We're doing okay. We got a ways to go. So we're proud that we raised that $40,000 for the rebuilding of the bridge, and we now offer that spirit out straight. So we've just been surviving, man. We've been swinging punches and just trying to claw our way along. Pandemic is definitely an added obstacle to making your distillery a reality.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we survived, so thank God.
Good
deal. I'm getting a little thirsty. So why don't we dive into the rice whiskey first of all, and let you tell us about that while we take a few sips, and then we'll ask a few more questions. So
let me tell a little bit about the company before I get into the whiskey. I want to talk about the name. So Golden Beaver Distillery, people going, people think we're doing tongue in cheek on it, and they think it's funny, but in reality, there was the Golden Beaver. There was about 3 million of these critters up here in the North Sacramento Valley in 1800. A guy named Jedediah Smith came up, happened to be it actually worked for the Hudson Bay Company as a trapper in Colorado and other places. Happened to see all the beaver, and of course he sends a note, a message, or whatever out to Hudson Bay Company before his death, which transpired about 2 or 3 months after he got into the country, or California. And they were back up in here in 3 or 4 years and wiped out the Golden Beaver. Golden Beaver actually created the wetlands between the Sacramento River and the Feather River. And these two rivers, Chico's at the top of this big V. And that space between there was actually all wetlands. That wetlands has been used for millennia by the migratory waterfowl that come out of Canada and Alaska. And they come in here and they rest in the wintertime. And that was all set up by, well, the beaver got wiped out and was replaced by the California rice farmer. And so that's why everything's called Pacific Flyway, is to set that up. And if you look at our labels, all our labels have the beaver on it. And that's to signify the importance of the beaver and all that.
Sure.
So anyway, so that's the whiskey.
Great story.
That's very
Thank
thoughtful.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you're drinking here is actually 1-year-old whiskey. And people say, why in the hell would you release a 1-year-old whiskey? We have a very unique condition for our rick house. First of all, we have temperature ranges of almost 60 degrees in one day. So we go from very hot, let's say 120, 130. We get the Delta breezes in here, which bring in cold air from the Pacific Ocean, drop the rick house temperatures in the neighborhood of 50, 55 degrees in the evening. And then right back up in the morning, we go back up in over 100 degrees in the rick house. It's a container, shipping container. So that's why we get these big spikes. But that actually rapidly ages our spirits, similar to the guys in Texas. But the difference between Texas and here, we're slightly drier. And I think that changes a whole lot when it comes to the aging. They're higher humidity most of the year there than we are.
So what do you see on Angel Share?
We get hit pretty hard. We're in the 10s to 13s for 1 year. So it's
okay.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So what's your barrel proof? What barrel entry proof?
Well, we go in at 110 on these.
Okay.
And the reason why is there's 2 barrels that we age at the same time. We take a used Buffalo Trace barrel with mash bill 1.
Okay.
And theirs are 7 to 8 years depending on when we get them from the broker. And so we have half of the batch in that. And then the other batch we do in a toasted Char 3 barrel from ISC. And we run those side by side. So what we're getting the sweet notes, the high notes, I call it, from the Buffalo Trace barrel.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting those base notes. We're getting that oak. We're getting the vanillins in from that new toasted barrel. So it's a nice light. It's a much lighter whiskey than you're used to if you're only drinking bourbon. But it's very complex. If you put a little water on it, which I think you guys did, if you put it on an ice cube and sip it over a period of 10 or 15 minutes, it changes like all whiskey does, but I think you drill down on all the flavors. And I think we've avoided having that heavy oak forward taste that you get with new make whiskey using this method. So
yeah.
No, it's a beautiful spirit. I mean, just straight up initial impression coming on the nose. There's just a beauty to it. I get a lot of white grape, honey, a little vanilla, a little bit of orchard fruit going on there.
Got a good nose there, Benjamin. There's a future for you in whiskey.
Almost like he does this for a living. Yeah. No, I agree, Ben. I tend to go, more of the Gala apple Bartlett pear, like the sweet kind of a thing. One of the things I love, Kris, a lot of whiskeys that are in this age range, at least that I've tried, skew heavily floral. And this one definitely comes through more on the developed side of that. Like you said, that honey note really comes through, not as a underdeveloped note, but as this is a mature note. And I'm not sure if that comes because of the use of the, used Buffalo Trace barrel or what, but it is really, really mature.
You mentioned a flavor note. You mentioned pear. So when we're doing coming off our second distillation for our hearts, the minute we taste pear, we're start collecting.
Okay.
It's to know that we're keying on as we're coming off the heads. So the pear is a naturally occurring note in our mash bill as it's coming off. So this is a California Cal Rose rice. It's called Cal Rose. It's a medium grain rice. It's got a very high starch value. It's actually used for sticky rice in the sushi business. All the Cal Rose rice, the majority of the Cal Rose rice that is grown up in this region gets shipped to Asia. It never even hits the supermarkets here in the States.
Wow.
It's so sought after. Then there's rice malt. We have a guy here in Chico that actually malts the stuff. Now, we don't get any diastatic power from the malting, but what we do get is a flavor component. Okay. And we use that flavor component to make our profile that we're looking for here.
Okay. That's fascinating.
You pretty much answered my next questions, which was asking about the rice and what the nature of that grain, that particular strain of rice contributes to the spirit. So
when you mentioned, go ahead, Kevin.
No, when you said that you get a flavor component from the malted rice, how much of this is malted rice, and what is that flavor component?
I have to shoot you if I told you the real It's a very similar ratio as you get for Scotch.
Okay.
Between with a malted barley and a non-malted barley.
Sure.
So we're in the 10 to 15, 20% range.
Sure.
I had at one point, to my wife's horror, at one point after Moonshine U, and I realized I had to go all in on rice, and how was I going to make a rice whiskey to compete with bourbon in America? I had about 38-gallon plastic buckets full of different mashes going on. I had malted barley, I had malted corn and rice, I had malted rice, and this guy does about 8 different versions of the malted rice, and we basically mashed and distilled all those over a period of about 4 months to come up with the recipe we have today. And I thought that was almost divorce material at that point, because there was buckets in the shower, there's buckets in the guest bathroom, up and down the hall. So, but it is. We took the time to find out where that right point, what we think is the right point for it.
What you got, and this is 86 proof, but it's got a depth of flavor that you don't typically find in a lower proof whiskey.
Correct.
And 3 of us were talking earlier about 90 proof whiskeys and what our preferences were there. And typically something that's in that 86 proof range wouldn't be something I would normally gravitate to.
It's a walk away.
But
you sit on the shop and you walk away. Sure.
Yeah. But this is different. This has a lot of complexity to it, and especially for only aging for a year. So that I think speaks to the skill in the distillation process as well.
I want to throw it, the finish coming off of this right now is something I have never encountered in a whiskey before. I'm literally getting the notes, even the sensation of like a brut champagne. Even there's a little minerality to it. There's just the flavor and profile of a champagne coming in on the finish, and it almost even feels like it's slightly carbonated. The way the way that kind of peppery tingle comes across on the back of the palate. That's gorgeous, Kris. It really is.
That's ISC for you. That's the toast. Yeah. It is that toast that they do on their barrels, for sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could drink on this for a while.
Yeah.
So
it's not for the typical bourbon drinker. I think if you're looking for that big Booker's, pow in your face type of bourbon, it's not going to be for you, But if you're transitioning out of Basil Hayden, or you're going off a Maker's Mark and you're moving into other whiskeys, or you're trying other American whiskeys, I think it's a good transition point.
Yeah.
And I think this would transition well for a wine drinker into whiskey, and not obviously this is not bourbon, but for somebody that's more into Scotch, getting them into a different kind of whiskey, I think this would be a good transition for them as well.
Yeah, the gateway drug.
It's a
You
gateway.
refer to it.
But at the same time, I mean, it's easy to say gateway, and oftentimes we think of spirits being very simple that are gateway, but this isn't. This is actually a very complex spirit, and I think somebody with a developed palate is going to really appreciate this more fully than just somebody who's entry level into spirits or whiskey.
Yeah.
Great point, man.
Yeah. And I'm looking at you can't see it in the video, but the legs on this thing, I mean it also is further proof of the oiliness and the viscosity you get out of it when you drink it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the mouthfeel comes off are still. So we have a Titan pot still, and it has all our spirits have this great mouthfeel that comes off that still, and a lot of that's there. But also the blend that we do between the Buffalo Trace and the ISC barrel also adds that, because of course we're pulling those sugars in, pulling those vanillins in, and we're picking up that spirit. So,
Kris, this that brings up a question for me. This is an ongoing discussion between Ben and I, as far as complexity in craft whiskey between still flavors and filtration flavors. What is your process as far as filtration? Are you guys using carbon? Are you using a chill filtration method? Are you doing anything other than proofing it down with RO water? What are you doing?
Well, we do RO water because you kind of have to. I mean,
sure.
You don't want any of the chloramines. You don't want the chlorine in there. And and then, our take on the city water, we have a very good high mineral content, which is great for mashing, but I don't necessarily want that into the final spirit. So we do the RO. And so we're just like every other distillery in the world. You're using RO. And I do have a block of limestone in front of that. No, I'm just kidding. Just for our friends in Kentucky. No, we use straight ahead RO. But why strip the flavors that the barrel gives? Why strip what the flavors that still give you?
Agreed. So just to clarify, and it's okay if you can't answer this, I'm just curious. As far as removing either tannic acid or fatty acid, there's no carbon process. There's no chill filtration going into this. I love that personally, and I appreciate that answer. It really allows, I think, the barrel and the grain to stand at the forefront of the flavor profile that we're all experiencing. So that's great. I was curious about that particular process for you.
I love our friends in Tennessee. I think they do great stuff. I'm not a huge fan, except for Sinatra. Is probably the only one that I would reach for if I had a choice on if I had to go Tennessee, because I think it's a very unique mash bill. They're using something, a different type of yeast. That's a great profile. But stripping anything coming off of a barrel with more carbon after you've done the char, I think it's just too much.
Yeah, it's counterproductive.
It's counterproductive for taste. Now, I understand why they were doing it at the time that they created that process. Post-Prohibition, people were drinking crappy whiskey. They were trying to do the Coca-Cola thing that you can pick a bottle up anywhere in the world, it's the same bottle. But I think we've moved past that in whiskey.
Yeah.
We should. I mean, we've gone on and we're going into flavors now. And I really like to see us actually now. There's a single malt movement going on in America, and I embrace that. I think it's great. And I'd love to create an American style rice whiskey, because you guys are tasting it right now. I think it's got a place in the marketplace.
Let's move on to the bourbon that you have, and may have some more questions about the rice whiskey as we go. But so you are very transparent about the fact that this is whiskey you've acquired from MGP.
Absolutely.
Which when I got the bottle and I looked on the back, it says in pretty good size font, on some of these bottles, you really have to search and hunt for it and get out the magnifying glass. But it distilled in Indiana, okay, and you're very open about that fact. But
you wouldn't be drinking this tonight if it wasn't for us. Those barrels would still be in the Rick House and MGP.
Because I had no idea that MGP ever did anything with rice in the mash bill, but you found it. Tell us about that.
So in the Holy Grail, as we were starting, I should say earlier, in the start of this whole process of realizing we're going to have to embrace rice, I discovered that a gentleman in Japan had done a no-cook mash bill of rice, trying to show that you could save energy by just, taking your rice, introducing water to it, tossing the yeast, and wait. They were using koji, they weren't using distiller's yeast. And so we're trying to do that. We're working on that, and we're looking at different distillers that had used rice here in the U.S. I'm going to be honest with you. I use this term kind of as a joke, but I believe that American distillers are very xenophobic about rice. They just don't believe that rice should be in an American whiskey. And yet we have two major regions in the United States that make some of the best rice in the world. We have Louisiana, that they're famous for their long grain rice, and we have here in Northern California, we're famous for medium grain. And nobody was using rice. And I happened to be looking and doing research, and I ran across a price list from MGP on barrels, and there was this rice bourbon. And I immediately picked up the phone and said, "What's the story on the rice bourbon?" And they said, "Well, we only have 5 barrels. It was something we did with the University of Michigan." And I said, "Please send me samples." And they sent me the 5 samples. And I immediately bought the barrel. This is before we even started the distillery. We were in fully funded. And it was like that was the first purchase we made before we had a still. We bought these 5 barrels. And these 5 barrels were, they must have been about 3 years old when we picked them up, 4 years old. The notes, as you guys have already found by sniffing it, it's different. And
it's very different.
There's no way you're going to compare that to anything that exists out there. I mean, it's just
no. You can't think MGP and put this in the glass in your glass and think, okay, this is not MGP at all. But because it's like nothing that they've done.
So it's a very complex. If you think this is at 119 proof, so absolutely needs a little splash of water to open up the nose on it. If you put this on a big ice sphere and sip it for 45 minutes, I will promise you every sip will be different. You will drill down through all the layers of this bourbon. And I think that's what you want, right? You want something that's going to be different. That's not one-dimensional. I mean, we all hail Pappy, but when you drink Pappy, it's still one-dimensional.
Right,
I mean,
right.
It's one of the best one-dimensional whiskeys. But this seems to be a little multi-dimensional to me.
No, that's actually one of my absolute favorite attributes of a spirit is when every time I raise the glass, there's something different, that it continues to change and evolve. And it's like those different layers continue to come out. That for me is like a hallmark of a exceptional spirit. So
yeah, there's citrus fruit, there's baking notes, there's
it's nutty, it's grain forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw one out here. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm way off, but if you guys have ever had the Great Big League Chew,
Yes.
There we go.
That comes prominent on the nose, and that spearmint, peppermint, and then that nuttiness comes through great on the palate.
And when I say nutty for bourbon drinkers, you tend to think of that peanut or peanut brittle kind of note. No, I'm talking tree nuts. This is like Brazil nut, walnut, kind of that category.
Almonds. I live in almond country up here. We have rice and almonds, and it's definitely got an almond thing going.
Yeah. There's some cinnamon in the nose too.
Yeah, that's from the barrel.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a note of quince.
Huh?
Quince, kind of the pear-like fruit. coming on the palate on this for me.
Oh my gosh.
Well, let me tell you the power of this whiskey. My
That's
wife
amazing.
wasn't a whiskey drinker when I met her. She's a wine drinker.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first whiskey that she would actually ask me to pour a glass for her. She just walked in here about 3 weeks ago and did the following. This is the last 3 barrels, and we bottled it up. Then she bought 3 6-bottle cases. It's in her closet, and I'm not allowed near it.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
It just shows you that's the beauty of rice, because I think the rice adds an extra layer of sweetness that you don't get off of a traditional corn mash bill, and I think that appeals to a lot of new drinkers because she's a new drinker.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many new drinkers can take 100 cask strength whiskey and or bourbon and enjoy it? They can't.
No.
They don't walk away from it. So,
No, it doesn't drink like the proof. It doesn't drink 119.
No,
because a lot of I'm thinking, okay, Knob Creek single barrels come in at 120. Those have a kind of can have a punch you in the jaw element. This is not that at all. Is there a little stone fruit in that too?
Well, break down stone fruit, Kevin, because that's a broad. You can go from cherries all the way to apricots.
Well,
that's a broad range.
I can see some peach.
Yeah,
I'd go with the apricot, Benjamin.
I think looking at apricot, and it's not a stone fruit, but an apple, that lighter white fruit, I guess, if you will.
Right.
Fiji apple kind of a thing.
Yeah.
That's where I kind of go towards the quince kind of thing. It's almost pear-like to me, but it's more like quince. If you have experience with that at all, then yeah, I think you'd be able to pick that out. But I'm sitting here. I haven't even taken a sip for the last couple of minutes because I'm just soaking in the finish. The finish goes on and on and on, and it's just absolutely delicious. It's creamy. There's a little bit of a leather note thing, but the fruit and the baking spice just carries on and on and on in this. It's gorgeous.
I'm totally blown away that MGP didn't take this after this study done by University of Michigan and go, we have something here. Just as much as Jim Beam did their brown rice little collection.
Right.
I'm really wondering why they didn't jump into it. And again, I think it's because it's rice.
The only other distillery I know that's really, I guess, that I'm familiar with actively using rice is back in my home state of South Carolina, 6 and 20. They do a 5-grain bourbon and they use the Carolina Gold rice in that one. Well, and you can taste it in the spirit, but it's
Now, Beam has started using rice again in the latest iteration of Little Book. There's some rice whiskey, and apparently that was the first thing that Freddie No distilled when he got to Beam, and then they have they've got a expression of Basil Hayden that is 27% rice. I think it's called Basil Hayden Toast. I've not had it yet. I think it just came out, but
good.
But if that gets some attention to rice whiskey, then that's all the better for you, right, Kris?
Yeah, no, we have 2 options here. We can make a rice whiskey like this and ship it to Asia all day long.
Yeah.
Or we can turn Americans onto a very cool product that we produce here in America. I mean, California, we grow corn. We grow a shitload of corn, probably equal to any other state. Maybe not Nebraska, but Central Valley of California is covered in corn. And depending on our drought season and what's going on with the water here, but rice is very unique to us, very unique to Louisiana. There's some stuff you just said. There's some in Arkansas and North Carolina, and I think these states could create obviously a great spirit from a local grain source,
right?
Take it off. I mean, the thing for us is we're taking. I'll even tell you, it even goes one more layer. Calrose rice goes through a mill like all rice, goes through a mill. The last step is there's a screen. The whole kernel of the rice gets to go in and gets bagged. The brokens fall through the screen and end up in my distillery. So we're making this from mill waste.
Wow.
We go out to Boston and go out to crackers. We're making this spirit. So we're creating a new market for the mills here by saying don't sell it off cheap to crackers. I mean, we still want it cheap. I mean, erase that. Is that our edit? Just kidding. But I'll tell you, my price per pound is much cheaper than corn.
Yeah.
And I'm getting 100 starch content per pound than corn.
Yep. That brings up a question for me. You know, I know you've been really open about the sourcing process with this, but you've mentioned the starch content in rice. Obviously, part of the fermentation process is the breaking down of starches into sugars.
Yep.
How much would you attribute the starch content and that conversion rate into the sweetness level of this? Because everything that we've mentioned has been heavy on the sweet aromatics. All of what we're tasting for this is in that category.
We just took a gold at Barleycorn, John Barleycorn Society, for our vodka. And our vodka has a sweet note 3 seconds after you drink it. It's a great clean vodka, and then there's this little ping of sweetness at the end. And it's rice. And whatever the chemicals coming over, I've never taken the time or spent the money to get it analyzed to really find out what are the chemicals coming across that attributes to the brain to think that you're actually having something sweet. We know there's no sugar in it, obviously, distillation, but those chemicals are triggering the brain to think it's sweet, and it's really not there. And it's all rice, man. It's all rice.
So, question for you on this: we share a mutual friend in Alan Bishop, who's got a real passion for absinthe, and the budding distiller in me, Alan and I've had some conversations about this. Is rice as a base spirit for absinthe? Is that
it's sitting in Benjamin, get in a plane, fly out here. I'm trying to macerate some colorant into our absinthe, which we did on a hillbilly still by Rick Gibson. We did a Tennessee Thumper.
Right.
We made our absinthe off that, and we're now just got to macerate some color in it. And it's super tasty, man.
Yeah.
And it's based on rice. Our gin is based on rice. Our beaver liquor moonshine is rice. In fact,
that beaver liquor is fantastic. I love that.
Thanks. So I'll just tell you the process. When it comes off the still as beaver liquor, we have an option. We can either stick it in the barrel and make the rice whiskey that you had earlier.
Right.
We can stick it back in the still and make vodka, run it in through a vodka still. We can stick it back in the still and do the gin. And our gin just got released, and it's super tasty, and people are loving it. We haven't submitted to any contests yet, but I can tell you it stands up.
I can't wait to try it. Big gin fan here, so
good. Well, we'll get you a bottle. So off air, send me the address. We'll get you a bottle. And then we did we put it through the thumper, and we made absinthe, and we've done other things, and it's super tasty, man. It's a great base, and it's not one-dimensional. Again, it's not one-dimensional. It has that sweetness. It still has the clean front end on it, like you get from a grain-neutral spirit. But then you have this extra layer of complexity to it. You get the almond, you get the sweet, all the things you're going to pair. All those things are there in the base spirit, and it just adds to the flavor of the spirit that you're ultimately trying to get to. So we make 5 spirits from one base mash.
That's amazing.
That's
incredible.
That's great.
Yeah, we're really we're happy we discovered all this.
Yeah.
So are you also starting to distill your own bourbon, or are you focusing on the rice whiskey right now?
What you're drinking right now, we have substituted the long grain with our mid grain Cal Rose rice, and I can tell you, tasting it off the still going into the barrel, it's going to kick this ass. It's going to be super good because it's already good just as a white dog. And we don't sell it as a white dog, but it could be a possibility at some point.
I think you've got a market of 3 right now for the white dog at least.
Yeah, sign me up. I'm in.
I'll send you some. No, every day it's great. It's a great day to come to work. We're going to be running the bourbon this week. We had a little cold snap, so we had to stop doing fermentations, and gave us a chance to clean, basically strip the stills down, clean them really good. We're going to start distilling the fermentations that have been basically sitting on ice for the past week. Wow. Believe it or not, California does get cold. We're down in 32-degree temperature up here in Northern California, and we can't throw anything in a fermenter at that temperature. Because we're not heated here. So
yeah.
But it's going to be great. We haven't tasted the rice bourbon in about 6 months because we do things in cycles here, like I distillery, and we did a lot of rice, and then we stopped and we did rice bourbon, and I can't wait to taste it again because it is so good coming off the still.
Awesome.
About how many barrels can you make in a week?
On a good day, we do 3. On a good week, we do 3 barrels.
Okay.
And, we're adding another vodka still to the mix, so that will help us move out what normally set aside for vodka. We'll put that back into other product. We're adding more fermenters every day, and then adding shifts to do more cooks.
Awesome.
So it's the problem with any startup distillery and small distillery is capacity. And we got to prepay that labor, man. We got to prepay the labor. And it's not for the weak of heart. I've done many startups. I've made a lot of films. Each film is a startup on its own. And I'll tell you, the business plan is not for the weak of heart. You've got to be able to suck it up, and you got to be able to see down the road 5 years. It's a very Asian business plan. If you talk to most folks, and especially in the 80s, if you read any, you guys were probably, there's only one guy who was born in the 80s. Before, there used to be all this stuff about Asia, why the Japanese were so much better than American businessmen, and they had this 7-year plan that looked at their business as a 7-year block. And this is definitely a 7-year block when you go on the whiskey. Minimum 7 years. Yeah. And you just have to be able to get through that. And you have to have everybody that's involved in your company has to see it's a 7-year plan. It's not overnight.
Yeah. Well, to add a layer of hope at some moment when you may need it, this kicks ass. It just does.
It's really good, man. Really good, Kris.
Kris, you and I met briefly. I don't know if you remember. We met at Jason Bronner's
the Buzzard
Roost release, and Golden Beaver and everybody that I talked to about it, they focused on the tongue-in-cheek thing with it, and I thought, that may be something, but you're not going to build a business on that, at least not for very long. And when you sent these bottles, and thank you for doing that, and I tried it, it's like, if all you're focusing on is being in junior high and and poking fun at the name of the distillery, you're missing the point, because this stuff is great. Is just the only problem I have with it is distribution.
Agreed.
It'll come. It'll come. We just have to get over we're in the 6th largest country in the world here in California.
Right.
And that's probably why you guys don't even know the names of the 209 distilleries that are here.
Yeah.
Because the market here locally sucks it up. And it's unfortunate because there are great distilleries here in California, and the product never leaves the metro area of that distillery because it gets consumed so quickly, and you guys never hear it about it. And we're working right now with the California Distillers, California Artisanal Distillers Guild. We're working to raise money tomorrow to send out to Kentucky, but we really don't get any exposure at all to what's going on in California distilling. And it's unfortunate because there's some great whiskeys being produced here in Napa, up in Humboldt. Alchemy Distillery does a great job with their stuff. And it's unfortunate. We don't get past that Mississippi line, man.
Yeah. There's very little that makes its way here. I mean, Redwood Empire, maybe some Sonoma.
Yeah.
Anything else, California, that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head? But I know that there are outstanding distilleries there. Yours being one of them. Okay. But unfortunately, how many people in the state of Kentucky or east of the Mississippi have had the opportunity to try it? But we need to spread that news and get people where they understand what's going on there, because everything shouldn't taste like a Kentucky bourbon.
No. And we don't all drink Coke every day, right?
Right. If you like spirits, then broaden your mind, broaden your palate, and let's try something different. And yet, Texas is now getting there's that Texas kind of profile there, and I imagine there's going to be a California profile as well, but I don't know that there's anybody else that's doing what you're doing with rice. Anywhere.
I don't know anybody here in California. There's some folks down in Louisiana doing it. There was a guy in Sacramento that's done some malted single. They've done a single malt with some rice, and they've done some stuff with it. But I think we're the first that actually blew up, and we're doing the 5 spirits off of one mash bill. And we did. I mean, there's economics to that. I mean, to be honest with you, we're just like the guys in Kentucky. I mean, you gotta maximize your production capacity and minimize your costs. So if you bring in multiple mash bills, each mash bill has a cost associated with it. And when you change mash bills in the cycle and distillery, it actually costs about a week and a half, because you got to stop, clean, sterilize, move through so you don't carry over flavors, and it just ends up costing more money. So if you can stick with one mash bill, like our buddies at Jim Beam, where they're just pumping out beam or turkey or whatever,
right?
To one exception of that would be, of course, Four Roses with their 9 different mash bills. But I'm sure there's a sequence there. They probably butt up those mash bills where they can overlap a little bit and not affect the flavor. You know what I'm saying? So there has to be something to do that. So
well, let's. I know we can go on forever, but we want to respect your time on this. But we definitely want to start talking music with you. But before we flip over to side B of the show, we want to talk a little bit about our own Drew Crawley and the EP that he has coming out called Tower Songs.
Yes.
So Drew, tell us about Tower Songs.
All right. So Tower Songs is a record that will be coming out early in 2022. The name comes from the building that I was living in at the time. All these songs were, written and arranged in that building. So it's a country and folk record. I had the privilege of writing and being with a great group of guys out of Nashville and Louisville. It'll be out, like I said, earlier next year, rather. We'll put together a great release show. It'll be available on all streaming services. If you're interested in hearing a little preview of that, there is a single available on Apple Music and Spotify. It's called Angel. Check it out. If you like that one, I'm pretty sure you'll like the rest of it. Yeah. But that'll be my little project in the first of next year.
Yeah. Congratulations, Drew. Cheers, buddy.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
It's great stuff.
Yep.
So, as we're getting into side B of the show, we want to talk with Kris about music and what it means to him. Obviously, it's important to you, Kris, because I see all the time on Facebook, and you even talked about it a little bit here before the show. You're having live music at your distillery quite a bit, right?
3 nights a week.
3 nights a week.
We have a DJ on Thursday nights.
Good.
So it's important. You know, you have the drink of life, you got to have the tunes of life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, music sets the mood for everything.
Yeah. So we just need to set up a time for Drew to come out and play, and
sure,
and we'll come out, tour the distillery, and taste some stuff and have a good time. Right?
I have a standing, offer to another podcast organization that if they get their ass out here to California, they'll have a place to stay. We'll cover the cost while they're here, and then you travel up and down the state of California, going to all the distilleries and give us some exposure. Because it really is a shame. There's some great stuff here in California.
Yeah,
doesn't get drank. So
well, we may have to make that trip. That sounds like a
good
good thing. That sounds like a very tempting thing.
A little Bourbon Turntable road trip. Let's do it.
Go.
I know we'll find some music and some whiskey out there, so it's good.
Get you to San Diego for a couple of days. You can get to LA and bring you up along the coast and go into Paso and hang out with those guys, and then bring you up through Napa, take you up through the Redwood Forest and over to Alchemy Distillery, and then back over here to Chico. So, and you can go up and visit the Governor's Distillery in now Sierra Palisades, former Squaw Valley, if you want to go do that. That's the only distillery I don't think closed during the pandemic.
I think that's right. I think it never closed. How about that?
Yeah.
Anyway, so from a music standpoint, what do you like to? What did you grow up listening to?
Well, so I'm the youngest of 6, and my brother, who is 9 years older than me, is a musician, professional, and so I grew up with the Doors, the Beatles, Allman Brothers. We did. Kind of just go through all Southern rock, everything that was going on post Woodstock.
Now, did you grow up in California? Are you a California guy?
My father was in the military. He's a pilot. So I grew up. I was born in Oklahoma. Went to Washington D.C. Came back to California when I was in Vietnam. Then went to Alabama. Then went to Texas. In Texas, my brother ended up forming a band that actually played at Armadillo headquarters. And we're talking, contemporaries were Stevie Ray Vaughan going along through there, and other bands coming up through the headquarters. And, at the same time, that rock overlay with Texas hill country. So you had Willie Nelson coming through, you had Waylon Jennings coming through. And my dad was a country guy, hated rock music, and then my brother was rock music, and my brother would terrorize me by playing the Doors at, when I was 5 years old, trying to go to sleep, and in the same room I shared with him, he's playing the Doors, Hellfire, and I'm like, oh Jesus Christ, just. So pretty eclectic exposure to music as a kid.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And then kind of going through the easy rock, early 80s. There's two big threads going. You had the quiet sound of jazz that was starting to develop in the early 80s. And where you had all the rockers that had transitioned over to become more engrossed with the music than the stadium sound, or let's say the hit record sound, and they wanted to get away from packaged music, and they spent a little more time. So you got into more of the jazz genre, rock jazz crossover stuff going. And then you had punk rock coming in new wave.
Mm-hmm.
And I embraced the punk rock and new wave as well. At the same time, sitting there at dinner, watch my dad watch Hee Haw, you know,
Yep.
and have an appreciation for country music, you know.
Yep.
But and then you got this guy that comes along named Jimmy Buffett, and in the late 70s, I started listening to a lot of Jimmy Buffett. I play the harmonica, and I learned how to play the harmonica from listening to two major albums, Jimmy Buffett Live and Willie Nelson Live.
Oh, wow.
And basically just mimicked all the harp music in those two great harmonica players. And
if you're going to pick two teachers, I don't know that you could do any better than those two guys.
No, they're great. So just, worked on it. I played harmonica pretty strong for about 25 years. I've kind of tapered off.
Wow.
Because I got a distillery. There's no fucking time. My language. But both played a big role. Willie Nelson and Jimmy, and then kind of moved through, and this upstart Bakersfield boy, Dwight Yoakam, kicks in. And to be honest with you, it's kind of like the glue. All that music that I had listened through my whole life comes to this one guy who actually has kind of stitched it all together. And he has a little bit of both or all of it in his music. And, if you listen to some of his recent albums, he really does kind of space off into other areas. And I think it's great. I think it's a good transition for him. But
that's great. I'm a big Yoakam fan too. So, very cool.
So Dwight does some good stuff, and Merle Haggard lived not 40 miles away from here, and big influence in this community. His cousin's a partner of mine, AJ Haggard, and he's part of our team here. Actually, AJ's got a great history that his uncles ran moonshine from Arkansas to Oklahoma. So there might be a brand there.
There's a brand there. There's a brand there for sure.
I might have to move back to Oklahoma and resurrect that.
That's it. But and I'm born in Oklahoma, so it just adds to the Okie story, So, and that's
what part of Oklahoma, Kris?
Enid,
okay.
Northern part of the state. So
I grew up in Shawnee. So I'm about 35 miles southeast of OKC, but very familiar with that area. Sorry for distracting the conversation.
Oh, no, it's actually part. I was just going to segue in what Okie means. I mean, most of the country doesn't know what Okie means. So during the Dust Bowl, the migration into California from everybody trying to flee the Dust Bowl, they came here basically aerospace factories, vineyards. They were doing the canning, the canneries. They were basically the migrant farm workers of the 40s and the 50s, and even dropped it obviously down into the 30s. But they were not greeted well. I mean, they were second-rate citizens, and against both the Hispanic culture here in California and also, multiple generation Californians that actually looked down on the Okies, and they had a shit life, man. I mean, really, really negative, almost to the point that if you consider the way people think of homeless in your cities today, you would think if you saw an Okie family on the side of the road with a tent pitched up and the guy's out working every day trying to make a living for his family, all those just lazy people. These are the hardest working people in town. But they were working. There is a difference there. I'm just telling you. And what we're seeing now is some of the homeless. So they actually overcame a lot, and their culture came over. That hillbilly culture, that because they had transitioned from from Oklahoma, they had come from somewhere else, so they came obviously from Appalachia. They carried over that music, and then they brought it here. And Dwight Yoakam does a great. If you get a chance to go see him when he's in,
he's great.
What do they call it? In residency in Las Vegas. You're getting old when you go, oh, I'll go see that.
Right.
But he does a great 3-hour show and he plays the whole time. He doesn't leave the stage for 3 hours.
Wow.
He usually goes through the whole evolution of music in California and where the Okie influence came into the Dead. They influenced the Grateful Dead. Listen to some of the stuff there with the slide guitar. That was all carryover from what was going on in Bakersfield. And a lot of the younger players that came out through like the Monkees and everything else, that was all transitioned back to that Bakersfield hillbilly Okie sound that came along. And so it's a very eclectic environment here in California. So
I love it. Well, thank you very much for enlightening me on that. Like I said, I grew up in Oklahoma, but I wasn't aware of all the history. So
yeah, come on. You got to go to Buck Owens restaurant. It's run by his son in Bakersfield called the Crystal Palace. You can see Buck Owens' Cadillac on the wall.
Yeah.
Actually up on the wall is Cadillac. And spend a day or two there because the musical roots, the people have walked through Buck's life, Buck's studio. Everyone got to start with Buck Owens. It would amaze you, both from a rock perspective as well as from a country sound perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up watching Hee Haw. Okay. And if that's the only impression you have of Buck Owens and Roy Clark, you're missing.
Oh yeah.
You're missing what they really mean. I mean, Hee Haw was great in terms of getting country artists out to the mainstream, but I think a lot of people kind of dismissed Buck and Roy as, well, that's just they're on this variety show, but their influence and their talent goes far deeper than what that show exemplified.
And Roy Clark, his guitar playing is absolutely incredible.
Well, he was a leading. I mean, if you're going to run anything in the studio in LA, who are you asking for on your lead guitar?
Yeah.
If you want Buck Owens on or you want Roy Clark on your album, because he was a phenomenal string instrument player. Whether it was banjo or guitar or mandolin, the guy was amazing.
Yep.
So it's funny you bring up Dwight Yoakam because
he was slightly better than I think Buck Owens. Buck Owens was a different genre. He went for the rock and he went out and he did his world tour stuff that is that Bakersfield sound. But artistry wise, I think Roy was actually a better artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting you bring up Dwight Yoakam because personally for me, one of my all-time favorite songs, and it's something that I never hear anybody ever mention, anybody ever talk about, is his singing of Sin City, his duet with Katie Lang.
Yeah.
That song, I mean, that's one that I come back to all the freaking time. I mean, I listen to a lot of his stuff, but that one song has always stuck with me from the first time I ever heard it. And I never hear anybody talk about it, anybody mention it when they talk about Dwight Yoakam. But that one song right there, that's one that just, I don't know, not sure what to nail down about it, but man, lyrically, musically, just the duet of those two together,
anything with Katie,
it's fantastic.
I mean, she's, as far as a vocalist, she's like one of the best of our day.
Right.
And she doesn't get the respect that she needs.
No, I was going to say she really got a raw deal from the country music community during the time when she was.
Let me figure out how that happened.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, that's how immature we are. Right.
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 Right. So unfortunately.
Yeah.
So obviously a very eclectic and diverse music background. And I think that fits in really well with us. So if you want to just join the show permanently, we make a spot for you. What was your first concert that you remember going to?
First real concert.
Real concert. Yeah.
Let's see. I'm having that elderly memory problem. Oh, there you are. You're back.
Okay.
Joe Jackson.
Oh, jeez.
In Miami,
Wow.
not Miami, in the Honolulu Bowl.
Yeah.
We showed up to the concert. I was a young wetback coastie, and
Okay. I'm very interested to hear what era Joe Jackson he's going to tell us when he gets back. Very underrated musician. Multi-instrumentalist. He played piano. I think he played saxophone as well.
Yeah.
I remember having a Joe Jackson album. It was a 3-sided album. Okay. Okay, we lost Kris there for a second. Hopefully he'll hop back in.
Yeah.
But man, yeah, I'm looking forward to this Joe Jackson conversation. This will be fun. But when you think about the diversity of what he's talking about in terms of artists that he's been influenced by and that he listens to,
Right.
I mean, you're going from Merle Haggard to the Doors. Okay,
Right.
that's pretty good.
And
Definitely
throw
wide
in 80s
variety of
punk.
influences.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Throw in 80s punk and new wave.
Yeah.
On top of that too. And yeah, you got a bright, colorful palette to paint with there.
Yeah. There's a lot there. Have either of you seen Dwight Yoakam live?
I have not gotten to yet. I'm hopeful to
Yeah.
in the next
Yeah.
little bit.
All right.
Hey.
Now we got Kris back. All right. We were
off to Vaporland.
Yeah. Okay. We were talking about Joe Jackson.
Joe
So I'm
Jackson.
really interested in hearing where this goes to. So
It's freaking amazing. So Joe Jackson comes out on stage. There's just a piano on stage.
Man.
And he goes, "The rest of my band is in Alaska." He sat there and did his whole concert, either him on the piano or a cappella.
Oh my God.
And it was freaking amazing concert. And, this is 1981, 82. So he was just starting his big climb up. But I got to tell you, man, that was a very special concert. And then from there, it was Carlos. I mean, that year I saw a bunch of stuff. Carlos Santana and who else did we see that week? We saw some minor country artists coming through and stuff like that. But Joe Jackson definitely was the highlight of that concert season. So
That's fantastic.
So
it's great to see shows like that where something goes wrong and the artist is talented enough or dedicated enough that they're going to make it work.
Right.
Yeah. No, his vocal range is amazing. His ability to stand in front of a crowd without 5 guys behind him.
Yeah.
Filling in for his mistakes. I mean, he was naked. The dude was absolutely naked up there on stage.
Yeah.
And totally shut down. Another great concert was the Motels. And there's a personal connection to that. So the Motels played at the University of Hawaii, and they were just up and coming at the time. And it's a small stage, and we got there early, and we got shoved up against the stage. And their lead singers got down on her knees and sang to me during the songs. And I got to tell you, man, fucking burned into my brain. Fucking great. That was another great.
I bet.
But she was awesome. Awesome vocalist. So
Wow.
That was, and then, I've had great concerts, Dwight, Willie, Joe, we've had Johnson, is great. Who else? Chris Stapleton, to bring it up to current time.
Yeah.
I've seen him 3 or 4 times. U2 was great. Coldplay, another great concert, a really cool venue where the artists are up front, and the next thing you know, they're behind you and they're 4 feet away because of the venue and the way they played it. So they played half the concert out on the lawn where we were. So it was another great opportunity to see some great artists. But I've seen Willie a few times, seen Jimmy a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
Don't see it. You don't remember all of Jimmy's concerts because there's usually involved. So you wake up on a sailboat in the intercoastal waterway going, oh, that was a good concert.
So if we give you a music time machine, and you could see, or maybe it's somebody that's still touring and playing, who would you want to see that you haven't?
Cody Jinks.
Really?
I think Cody Jinks right now, if you're going to tell me, somebody I think is probably the mix of everything I know musically. And I've commissioned music that's been played by the London Symphony Orchestra for a film, recorded at Abbey Road Studios, and I was there when it happened. So I got a pretty good broad musical appreciation. I think Cody Jinks right now is the most underrated musician in the world. His lyrics, his vocals, his storytelling, it comes down to a story. We're in the whiskey business. It's all about the story.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. We live off the story. He's got it down. And I think Cody, he just doesn't get the appreciation. Obviously, he's not going to get the appreciation from mainstream country because I don't know what the crap that shit is. I swear to God, you listen like 2 minutes, like I'm tired of 13-year-old music. This is music written for a 13-year-old girl, and it's in puberty. I mean, we really don't need this. And so you flip over to Sirius, you might list Outlaw Country. You might get 2 or 3 songs from Cody Jinks through the thing. And I don't know why they don't play more of them because he's really good. His stuff is really good. So
that's why I call modern country Nashville pop. To me, it's not even country music.
Some of that stuff, 20 years ago, we would call rap. I mean, it's just, or hip hop. It's just not. It's not country. And I'm not saying that people who are producing it don't think it's country. In their world, it's their country. But and there's some talent there. I'm not saying there's not quality, but singing about a mirror ball over a creek is not country. Taking one of our buddy from Australia who seems to demand the charts. I mean, that lyric. No, you're out.
I can't fathom who you're talking about, Kris.
So maybe I'm a little too critical about musicians, but lyrics, it's all about the lyrics, man. Anybody can run a riff on a guitar if you practice long enough.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But the lyrics, writing words, and that goes back to my background in writing, words really freaking matter. And if you cannot write sincerely about the thing, who's the comedian? My kid listens to him all the time, but he does Burnham.
Bo Burnham.
Bo Burnham. He does a great song, Pander. And it's a country song. He talks about how country singers are pandering to people of the country. Yep. And it is so true. And you listen to that song, you can't turn on pop country and go, oh yeah, they're pandering. This is all pandering. Mm-hmm. Red truck, blue jeans, blue cutoff shorts. It's all pandering. That's not country. That's not, people bust their ass all day out on a factory line or in a field. That's not what they're doing. They're going home and they're, they're tired. They got stories. They're having conflicts. There's problems in their lives. Talk about that. It's, and it goes back to Lorette. When she's talking about Loretta Lynn, when she's talking about, don't come home drunk thinking about sex. You ain't gonna get it. You know?
Yeah.
That's country. That's country music. This shit, I'm gonna go to the bar, get drunk, get in my truck. No, bullshit. It's not it. It pisses me off. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get very emotional.
Yeah. No, it's like you said, they're pandering, they're singing and playing to a stereotype.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's it. And it's just, all it is song after song and album after album of literally the same thing. There's hardly anything differentiating any of it.
Now, I will say some artists that I would counter that would be Brantley Gilbert. Brantley's lyrics kind of get away from that. He's still kind of that on the edge of that genre. That's probably why he hasn't done great after his first album, because he probably won't write crap, that they want him to write, so he walks away from it. Jamie Johnson, of course.
Yeah.
He's the same type of artist. He's like, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to write that crap. And he is phenomenal in concert. If you haven't seen Jamie Johnson in concert, probably one of the best concerts was 2 years ago before COVID kicked in. He went from hard country and country rock all the way to jazz with horns and I think he had a clarinet. And I've got to tell you, it was a totally amazing concert. One of the best concerts I've ever seen. So
absolutely. Yeah, I would throw 3 in on top of that. You got Tyler Childers, Zach Bryan, and Brittany Spencer. If you take those 3, if you're willing to get outside of the kind of the Nashville pop, then you'll go away from that just a little bit. Those 3 are killing it with the lyricism.
And Millsap. What's the guy's first name? I can't
Ronnie
remember.
Millsap.
Not Ronnie Millsap. No.
No.
It's not Millsap. Give me a second. There's a reason why we have iPhones.
Right.
Gotta get my glasses on.
I was going to throw out Sturgill Simpson while you're looking that up too.
Yeah.
That's another one that.
Which one?
Sturgill Simpson.
Oh, Sturgill's great.
Yeah.
You can't understand a fucking word he's singing, but he's if you finally, he actually did a bluegrass album, and I'm sorry I didn't bring my encyclopedia of albums in my head. He did a bluegrass album where he took all his hits and he did in bluegrass, and it's the first time you can hear the lyrics because he slowed down, and somebody must have been pounding on him saying, "You're not enunciating."
Yeah.
They probably whoever the producer was, I gave him kudos for that. But let me see if I can find this guy. Parker Millsap. So if you haven't heard of Parker Millsap, go grab a couple albums off of Apple. He's also very good. He's kind of a crossover between Paul McCartney and Willie Nelson.
Okay.
He's got this Paul McCartney kind of sound, but it's got the Willie Nelson lyrics and the songwriting, and it's really cool. It's really.
Yep. I know what I'll be listening to on the drive to work tomorrow. Thank you for the recommendation, sir.
Yeah. No, check it out. He's got an interesting sound, and he's right in there with Childers. He's same like Tyler. They're kind of contemporaries. It's kind of very similar roots in their American music. So
that's awesome.
Nice.
So is this are the artists that you've talked about, does that represent the style of music that you guys have at the distillery? Yeah,
we do. We're pretty heavy on Americana.
Yep.
So we have I call them 2 house bands. We got 3 house bands actually. We got one called the Red Dirt Bullies, and super good. Mainly bluegrass. Doing a lot of bluegrass with them. We have another group called Strung Nugget Band, and they're over in the gold country over in Oroville. So one of the biggest gold strikes is about 20 miles from here. And the cool thing about them is their mandolin player is phenomenal. He teaches music in the local school system here. This guy takes every hit from 1980 and the 90s and he bluegrasses the shit out of it, and he just jams on his mandolin like you wouldn't believe. This guy's phenomenal, and he sings just equal to his playing. I mean, this guy missed his calling. Somebody should have lined him up years ago.
Yeah.
And then we do that. So it's really, we try to stay in that Americana. We're trying to bring, for moonshine, bringing moonshine out of the woods here. I mean, there was moonshine up along the ridge here, but to bring moonshine and bring it here, we have to drag Appalachia here, and people are expecting to hear that sound. I'm a promoter. It sells whiskey. We're promoting that image of what whiskey is supposed to be. Once we get them in here, we can then turn them into bourbon drinkers, and then turn them into whiskey drinkers. I mean, that's the progression. And, 4 years from now, they'll be drinking, come in asking for rice whiskey and not, what's that bottle over there? It's kind of different.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
So,
well, as we're kind of wrapping things up here, I do want to ask you, what's next for Kris and for Golden Beaver? What do you guys got going that's down the pike?
Refining. We're gonna make this. We're gonna take the rice whiskey. Got to get a little older. You guys will be tasting older rice whiskey coming out later this year. The rice bourbon will be coming out in 3 years. We'll have some of that. Our gin is pretty good. We're going to continue to use the rice base and other traditional spirits like vodka. We'll probably do a rum because we have to. I mean, people come in and ask for rum, and we've got to have it. I do have a great story, and there'll be another interview possibility for you guys. I was lost at sea when I worked for Skin Diver magazine in the middle Pacific in a tropical storm on a 50-foot Japanese fishing boat that the bow of the boat had ripped off. And the captain was trying to kill us, and we had to survive the 3 days in these 20, 30-foot waves and seas. And obviously I got out of it. Got PTSD probably from it. But the name of the boat was called the Blue Shark, and we're going to come out with our Blue Shark rum to kind of go along with that story. And of course, rum is not something that should be natural to California because we don't have a lot of sugar cane.
Right.
But we do have a pretty good pipeline to Hawaii, and we'll leverage that relationship. We'll continue to push through with our honey spirits.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a good relationship with there you go, Keeper Shine right there.
Yep.
It is, we didn't mention it earlier, but we're very proud of it. We just got a bronze and a silver for our aged versions of those, that spirit. It's very good. We make it from honey that comes from Kona, Hawaii. We bring it in 55-gallon drums. We dump it in here and dilute it down. And 5 days later, it's in the still. And,
wow.
It's a very unique spirit. I mean, Benjamin probably knows. It's a delayed reaction. You put it across your tongue, and you feel this really clean, almost neutral grain spirit come across your tongue. And then 3 seconds later, your mouth just feels like somebody's shoved honey in your mouth.
Yep.
I mean, it just out of nowhere, it just blows up. And it's another very interesting spirit that we need to do a lot more with. And we're aging it here and work with the folks at OHB to come up with some cool stuff with that.
Mm-hmm.
But rice, it's all about rice, man.
Wow.
Rice is our future. So
love it.
This is fantastic.
Yeah.
We're very excited for you, what you're doing.
Yep.
And what we've tasted tonight has, I mean, I know you've won me over, and I'm pretty sure I speak for Drew and Ben as well. This is very exciting stuff that you're doing, and you're carving a really nice niche for yourself and Golden Beaver. This is going to be really cool to watch.
Thank you.
But we'll start wrapping up the show. Ben, tell us about another show that's in the Bar Cart group.
Bar Cart Co-op. So there's a great group of us. We've got some wonderful shows going on. There's obviously We're Here. There's My Whiskey Den, which I've previously discussed. and there is Monday Night Sucks. And that is our good friends Jack. Again, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his last name. He does a great job with this. We have the Single Barrel Snob that joins him on that show, and together they have a lot of fun. They really dig on some good whiskeys, and it's just a fantastic show to watch. And even more, their social media alone is worth the follow on both of those guys. But the show is fantastic. Comes on Mondays, of course. I think they start around 8:30, if I remember right.
Yeah.
But yeah, find them on Instagram. They do Instagram Live with that, and a great place to keep up with both those guys. So that's another great show from the Barbird Co-op.
Monday Suck.
Yeah.
Drew, tell us what's coming up next week for us.
All right. Yeah, big thanks to Kris for being on tonight. Next week, we are going to have our January 2022 show, New Whiskey and New Music, where Ben and Kevin and myself are talking about a couple of new artists, new records that we love, as well as some new whiskey that we are trying going into the new year. So I'm sure that's going to be an entertaining time for everybody.
Yeah. Well, we've tried some new whiskey tonight. That's been pretty much a hit.
Yep.
Maybe Parker Millsap will be on our new music list. So yeah, we want to try to bring new music to people. A lot of people have struggled to find good new artists to listen to, and they're out there. You just have to search, and it takes a little bit of effort, and hopefully we can help shorten that process for folks. But new music, new whiskey coming up next week. But for now, on behalf of Drew and Benjamin and myself, Kris, thank you very much.
Yep.
Man, this was fantastic. We just had a great time. And
on your show, man.
And hope we can have you on again in a few months and see what else is going on for you. And next time you're in Kentucky, you need to let us know, and we'll go out and we'll find some live music to enjoy with you. And
let me tell you, not to break up your close here.
Yep.
If you ever get a chance to see Pat Heist sing at the Dive Club in Louisville, you will achieve greatness in your life, because that is one of the best concerts you'll ever see. So.
Well, maybe when you get out here next time, we'll get lucky and he'll be playing too. So
yeah, I'll drag his ass out there, man. That's how I met Pat.
That's awesome.
Besides that, we need to get to California, boys.
We do need to get to California.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
I'm ready to go right now.
Cool, guys. Open invitation anytime.
Well, don't be surprised if we take you up on that sometime in the not too distant future.
Please.
But again, thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Kris.
Learning about you,
Absolutely.
what you're doing. Man, we're excited for you and talking music with you. You just hit the sweet spot all the way around. So,
thank you, guys. And Binge, when you get tired of working with one of the best distilleries in the world, you always got a job.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh man. All right. Well, again, on behalf of Drew and Ben and myself, thank you to Kris, and thank you all for watching tonight. And please like, share, subscribe, comment. We will have a playlist that we'll put out on this as well, based on a lot of the stuff that artists that Kris talked about tonight. So until next time, cheers, love, and free bird.
Free bird, man.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.